welcome to another episode of the Meta. And joining me again is the Privateer Press staff, Modest at Large, Faye. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
I am well. How are you?
That's good to hear. I'm doing great.
All right. Well, so this is my monthly interview with a Privateer Press staffer, and wanted to just, I guess, dive in and get to the questions from the patrons.
Sure.
I guess before I do, just wanted to ask what sort of things have you been working on that you can discuss, and what's a day in the life of Faye look like right now?
Well, one thing that I've been working on that I could discuss a little bit more in depth is the next OP, which is actually coming out in a week. I think it's the 24th. So it's coming out pretty soon. It wasn't solicited because we didn't know when we'd get the patches in. We finally got them in, and it's just kind of a weird timing. But it's about kind of a prelude to the Orgothian invasion. It's called Dark Tidings, kind of as a rift for the holiday season. But yeah, you'll kind of collect some Orgoth artifacts from your faction's treasure trove, that you've collected throughout hundreds of years, and then bring them to this weird Felgothian relic that appeared in southern Kador, and see if you can uncover the secrets that this Felgothian relic is trying to tell you.
Awesome. So, I guess what do you think is the most fun or most exciting thing about this organized play experience?
Well, it's a fun little extra scenario. You get to choose. It's actually a scenario that people should be able to play a lot, which is nice. It can kind of just be something that you play like once a week or something like that. But it's really simple. It's just two zones, the Felgothian relic in the middle, and then each player brings some Orgothian artifacts of their choosing, and each of the Orgothian artifacts gives you like one special rule for one model. So it's trying to be as simple as possible. It's kind of like regular objectives, giving out one special rule. And you destroy your opponent's artifacts and try and discover the secrets of your artifacts. It's just kind of a nice, fun little scenario that should be something enjoyable, and people will get to see the Orgothian language in an Orgothian spell rune for the first time. So that's kind of cool. Something to look forward to.
Yeah, that is cool. All right, so let's dive into the questions. We have Dragon Pup has our first set of questions. He says, now that's been out for about a month, how are you feeling about the great rebalance in terms of how it's been received? My group is quite happy with it, and I'm actually painting Cossite Woodsman, and overall where the game is balanced.
So I'm much happier with where the game is wise. I wanted to do, this might actually answer some future questions all at once, but I wanted to do another update in about 3 or 4 months, but it's going to end up being a little too close to Orgoth's release. Not that necessarily tells you exactly when they're happening, but they're happening, kind of sometime in 2022. So it's going to be delayed.
That's a little bit quicker than I was expecting. I mean, I'm used to seeing kind of June releases for new factions, so that's a little bit of an exciting teaser.
Yeah, it's you will see Orgoth rules in 2022. Let me put it that way.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, but it's going to, the next update is going to be probably well after that, maybe a full year. So it might be about a year and a half before another update. But we're probably going to be doing these smaller updates like these way more often, and in response to something not working, or just something not living up to its potential, that kind of thing, a bit more often, because we're going to have kind of a better technology to do that in the future. So it's going to be way less work, because right now we're still updating the card database for the previous update, which granted was 800 models, but it's just a ton of work updating that card database. So we're we're hopeful that we'll have better technology and a better way to facilitate these updates in the future, but we're going to have to slow down for now while we figure that out. But as far as balance goes, I'm very happy with where it is. I think there are a handful of things that are probably potentially off very slightly. Just off the top of my head, I think that satyrs might need to be one more point sometime in the future, but I'm not too worried about them right now. There's a bunch of things that weren't hit in the update, and unfortunately, they're going to have to wait until that timeline that I just said. But there's people are reaching for models that they haven't reached for since Mark 1, and that's just amazing, right? It's just nice to have that happen. So I think no matter what, that makes a success.
I guess a quick follow-up question is there anything you can say about the potential technology updates and how it might impact the players or end users?
Not yet. It's a little too soon. So I can tell you that it's coming. I just can't tell you how it's
coming. Okay. Awesome. All right. So next question from Dragon Pup. He says, specifically, how do you feel about Fiora 3? I enjoyed her quite a lot in Mark 3, but with the update, now she's the shortest range insight caster with the most one-dimensional feat amongst.
Fiora 3 got a bit of a upgrade. Granted, the Living Covenant got a nerf before anybody really saw it. Really, its rules were just updated before anyone saw it. So it's not quite as good as I think some people were hoping. But it, in conjunction with Fiora 3, is a pretty good upgrade to her kit. I do agree that, Fiora 3 is among the warcasters that could probably use a very, very slight upgrade, but it would be something small. Like, it wouldn't be, I don't think Fiora 3 has significant upkeeps, but it wouldn't be something on the power of like synergistic magic. It would be something small, maybe something akin to what Vale ended up getting. But I probably wouldn't a lot there because I would want to see how the Living Covenant pans out there.
Next question from Dragon Pup. Aside from Kristen 2, what's on your radar for the next round of dynamic updates?
Yeah, there's a bunch of models that really need a solid lookout from the ground up, and we're probably going to have time to do that over the next several months. But you guys won't see them for at least a while. So just don't expect anything in the near future. It's going to be a while. But we're going to have time to start working on some of those kind of longer term projects. As far as models that I think are in that category, it's definitely Tristan 2. I'm trying to think of other just warcasters that are just abysmal. I know I have a list somewhere. It's not like on hand, and I can't think of them immediately. I give up.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is, how was Warfare Weekend?
I really liked Warfare Weekend. It was fun. That was my first convention that wasn't Lock and Load that I worked, and that was kind of fun. I ended up mostly just commentating and watching games because I was keen to see what some higher level players thought of the update, right? So, there was a bunch of very, very good players that are very accustomed to their factions, and I saw them having changed their lists, not just to like fill in points, but to pick some things up that they never picked up before. So that was nice to see. And I very much enjoyed the kind of what ended up being a very spontaneous reaction to the update, and seeing what people thought of, right away afterward. Other than that, Getz and I got into a really weird political conversation around a whole bunch of people. That was fun. Anything else crazy? Oh, Fuzzy's Tacos is terrible. Don't eat there. It's real bad.
It's unfortunate that the St. Louis pizza place was closed so that you couldn't suffer through that experience and eat something even worse than Fuzzy's Tacos.
I mean, Fuzzy's Tacos didn't have any flavor, period. So I don't know if it could be worse.
Well, if you make pizza out of crackers and processed cheese, and that's St. Louis pizza, so I mean, I guess that's your Your mileage may vary, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on what, like the sauce they use. Like, does it have some herbs and stuff in it? I think it might be better,
Okay, okay. All right. So next question from Dragon Puppy. He basically asks, will the upcoming releases that are not Orgoth, are they going to be in the Requiem timeline? Are they what sort of things can we expect?
So outside of Mini Crate, obviously, everything's going to be really the post Requiem timeline. So Requiem is about 5 years after Oblivion, and the Orgoth arrive a time after that. I know Getz has a very specific time after that in mind, but Getz in Souls, but I don't remember what it is, so I'm not going to say it. But yes, so everything kind of Orgoth coming back and forward is what we're looking at. We're never going backwards to like do old stuff. We probably won't do zeros again. We're really going to be trying to look forward because we've got this nice big time jump, and it's going to let us see some new technologies and how the factions have advanced and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's interesting and exciting information.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, what sort of playstyles and themes should we expect out of Orgoth? What are you hyped for with them?
So I have to be very, very cagey with what I talk about with Orgoth. So just so you know, I'm not giving you a ton of information for a very specific reason, because they're still months away. That's the reason. But they've ended up with a bit of a playstyle where you kind of smush Khador and Crix together, and you add Viking, and that's kind of the feel that Orgoth are getting. And they are going to be a very prototypical War Machine faction. So no significant new special rules that are faction exclusive, or anything like that. But yeah, they do. I think that they're going to be none of their casters feel like Crix casters, nor do they feel like Khador casters. But the faction itself kind of feels like a mix of the two. But the casters almost feel a little bit more like Infernal Masters, right? They're big and burly and gnarly. So yeah, and in case anybody doesn't know, all Orgoth are human. They're just like 7 to 8 feet tall human. So expect a medium based army that's going to be some weird fusion of multiple armies.
All right, so next question from Dragon Pup. He basically says that after the kind of Mesoamerican monster apocalypse stuff that is coming out, which, as a side note, I think is some of the coolest looking sculpts that Predator Press has done. Period. So I think those are turning out amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, those are Emmanuel Class's designs. Together we developed the rules, so they still have the core development rules by me and Emmanuel. But they were his kind of concept. And when I first saw the concept, I was like, oh man, I don't know if this is gonna work. It feels a little iffy. And then I think he pulled it out, and a lot of his initial choices for art briefs and stuff like that gave our artists great ideas on how to produce a really cool looking faction. So 2 really cool looking factions.
So once those come out, what should people expect from the future of Monster Apocalypse?
So Vegetyrants and Necroscourge are going to get filled out. So they've got kind of the full 3 monsters, 3 unit packs in a building thing. And then there's going to kind of intermixed in there's going to be some filling out of some other older factions that aren't completely done yet. And then that gets us kind of to the end of 2022, and we've got to figure out what we want to do after that, right? The Mythic Kickstarter was something that is going to have to inform us into the future, and kind of somewhere near the end of 2022, you guys will probably start to see decisions that we're that we are currently making based on how that Kickstarter went. But there's plans to continue to support Monpok for the foreseeable future.
Awesome. All right, so next question. With Chili Con Carnage shipped, what's in store in the future for the next season of Riot Quest?
So the next Kickstarter is soon, and I really want to announce a bunch of things for it, but I can't because we're not there yet. But I think people will be very interested in it, especially if they never got into Riot Quest in the first place. So all of that being said, we don't plan to do a new season for the next Kickstarter. So just so everyone's fully aware, it's going to at least be the Kickstarter after this next one that expands and does another potential season, or we could go in another direction. We're not 100% sure what we want to do further into the future past this coming Kickstarter, but there should be information coming out. Really, I don't know. I would say January or February. Late January or early February is when people will start getting information about the next Kickstarter, because we very much want all of the IKRPG to be done and shipped before we start another Kickstarter, which we are actively starting to do right now, but it's gonna take a bit.
Yeah. Next question. You previously mentioned some new starter box product plans that were thrown into disarray thanks to COVID. Are there still plans to do that once the world is a bit less pandemic-y?
There are plans to have starter boxes again, but they kind of got rolled into something that's going to be coming later in 2022. So unfortunately, primarily due to we wanted something kind of to tide us over until mid to late 2022, but unfortunately it just didn't happen correctly, and now we're too close to that, so we just can't. The timeline didn't work, unfortunately.
All right, so next set of questions are from Bennett. His first one is, how does someone give good feedback?
So, if you want to give feedback, we have an email for that. It's feedback@privateer.com. The thing to know about feedback when you give it is that, number one, we don't constantly check that email. We check it, maybe once or twice a month, and then collect anything and distribute it to the people that need to know about it. So you probably won't get an email back. That's one of the things that's important to know. But feedback is very difficult for us to use. Usually we collect our own feedback through our own channels, which is watching tournaments, listening to the community directly on things like Discord and Facebook, and through our playtesters.
All right, so next question from Bennett. He asks, how is the War Machine and Hordes narrative going to progress? Will there be advancement in the overarching story, or will it evolve more in an open playing field for players of both RPG and wargame to make their own narratives in it?
So everything that happens in the IKRPG books is canon. And when I say everything, I mean if adventurers, quote unquote, do something, then it's just a generic group of adventurers that did it. It's not your specific adventurers. But like the whole happenings of the most recent Witchfire adventure, those all happened canonically. It was just a random group of adventurers that helped Alexia. So, in the storyline's progressing, right? Rule has a big group of people from all over the Iron Kingdoms under their control now. They've kind of got a bunch of people have gone to Rule to live there because it's kind of one of the most peaceful kingdoms right now. So they've got a hodgepodge of people, and they've got a very interesting mixing pot going on within their country. The crazy stuff in Ios has all happened and is, happening. Kador, under the rule of the Empress, is gearing up for something. Who knows? Signarin technology has advanced, right? all of these things that have happened in the IKRPG are all canon and they have progressed the story. And the next big progression to the story is the Orgothian invasion or re-invasion. And we don't know exactly, well, we know. I can't tell you exactly what all of that entails, but it entails story progression for every faction more or less. There's a few factions that are kind of put on the back burner for now. Protectorate being a very obvious one, where in Scorn, where the country of Protectorate is basically a ghost town except for a handful of cities, and most of their warriors went with Tristan down to Zoo. So they're going to kind of disappear for a little while in the narrative, and then I'm sure we'll go back to them at some point. The same will happen with Scorn, right? They've gotten pushed across the desert, and I'm sure that we'll eventually go back to Scorn. But yeah, you guys will see the storyline continue to progress, and I do know that we are finishing Henchhold Scrolls that we should have finished like 2 years ago, but we didn't know what to do with the pandemic, so it got super delayed. But we are finishing those, and I think that's starting this month. I think it's starting real soon, actually.
All right, so next question from Ben Up. He says, will there be any sort of rebalancing for Warcaster or other Privateer Press games going forward?
I would like Souls to do that, but Warcaster is really 100% Souls' game. It's really the one game that I don't have a lot of interaction with, other than knowing it and like proofing cards and stuff like that. There is a planned dynamic update for Mompoc that's going to be happening pretty soon, probably February. That's potentially as soon as it could be. It could end up being March as well. But yeah, that's planned. I already have all the models listed out. They already have all their updates, and we're playtesting it right now. So that's well locked in happening. You don't really need to do a ton of balancing with Riot Quest, because Riot Quest is zany, but I could see us eventually small with Riot Quest. Yeah, those are the games.
His next question is basically, of the games that the Privateer Press makes, what lists or crews or etc. are you enjoying playing in each of the games?
So in Mompoc, my favorite Destroyers faction is Masters. They're weird and very much my aesthetic. My favorite Protectors factions are, generally speaking, a hodgepodge. I like to field Empire and Green Fury and Elementals, and I kind of like a bit of everything, and that doesn't really help. But Destroyers, definitely Masters is my favorite faction. War Machine, everybody knows I play. Trolls, I also play. Mercenaries, I play a lot of kind of Samurai lists because I just like I like Cross and I like Fiona in some of the Thamurite lists. In Riot Quest, I almost always have a Bella on my crew because that's mandatory. Anyone else? I don't know if anyone else really appears on my crew constantly. I usually have a Flubbin because I've been playing with both Flubbins for a long time now. Everyone else has only gotten their second Flubbin recently. But yeah, Flubbin and Bella always. And other than that, I just like I often pick randomly because I like doing those kind of things. Like I'll come to a casual game of War Machine and I'll roll a d20 and play a random caster. So.
Next question from Ben Up. He says he's not as much of a role player himself, but he's curious, how does it seem the reception for the IK RPG seem to have been among the D&D community in general?
I know amongst our community it's done quite well, and the books aren't really in people's hands, but they've had the PDFs for a while. So I haven't heard any obvious complaints other than, small little things. And I've heard a bunch of people playing games. I haven't unfortunately, because I'm I only do one campaign at a time, and my current campaign is just regular 5e. I have a hard and fast rule of not getting involved in too many uh, too many paper and pencil games at once. But I would like to eventually find a group to play IKRPG, but that I gotta wait until my current my current game is kaput. But I think the reception's been great. People have really liked the forward motion in the story and the exploration of these concepts in a different game system, and especially a game system that is so popular and easy to pick up for new role players.
All right. So next question from Ben up. He says, "How long would you give a meta to quote unquote settle?"
Oh, it depends on how many major tournaments are happening, right? If like 5 major tournaments happen in 3 months, then that might be as little as needed. But right, if there's a long drought of major events, which unfortunately tends to be the case even now, right? I think the next big event is LVO, pretty sure. And then there's another one in a few months, so that'll be three really big events since the update, which just isn't enough to get enough data. So it's in the kind of the slower climate post pandemic, probably 6 to 8 months for something to truly settle.
All right. So Brent has some questions about. He wants to know basically what's the current status of things like the CID, Iron Gauntlet, and Champions formats.
So Champions is currently dead this season. We don't know if we're going to be bringing it back or not for next season. But yeah, it's doesn't happen this season. Iron Gauntlet, we are going to have to make a decision on soon, but there almost certainly will be an Iron Gauntlet in 2022. It just might not necessarily be at lock and load, because we aren't 100% sure that a lock and load can happen this year. There might be there probably will be lock in the future, but unfortunately, I think it primarily is the fact that we just didn't get the process started soon enough, right? So at this point, trying to find the right space is going to be difficult for us. But we are planning to, even though lock and load might not happen, we want an Iron Gauntlet to happen because it just hasn't happened in 3 years. And I kind of wish that I went back in time and chose a convention to do Iron Gauntlet for 2021, but I just couldn't see far enough into the future, right? So it's unfortunate, but it happened. So expect a Iron Gauntlet at an event sometime in 2022, probably the second half of 2022. And we're going to try and announce it as quickly as possible so that people can start making plans.
And any thoughts on CID?
CID is probably dead. We might end up bringing it back, but just don't expect it for another solid couple of years. We have a plan for a bit more of an open kind of thing that's a little bit longer, but that's going to happen, a good bit into the future, and it's not going to be CID. Theoretically, it could come back in like 2023, but I at least kind of doubt that it will, because we've been having really good success with our playtest teams, and as long as that success continues to be felt, then probably we'll keep on doing that, unless of course we end up needing a lot more resources, which happens if we speed up our speed up putting out models again after Orgoth. I'm not 100% sure what it looks like after Orgoth. I'm not privy to that far into the future. So.
All right. So next set of questions are from Morse. His first one, he says that with the timeline of the game advancing, there's a lot of threads in the lore that are ripe for representation, stuff like the Eldritch or Sky ships, etc. But he's curious if on future releases, if it is likely to be blocks focusing on one faction at a time, or a trickle of models spread over many factions?
Gosh. So I know what the answer is for 2022, which is that there's going to be some blocks of some factions, probably about 4. But I don't know what the answer is after 2022. So it could change dramatically. It could, yeah. I it's blocks until at least the end of 2022. But
Okay.
yeah, you'll see some Eldritch at some point. They're happening. Those are going. Who knows who they belong to, but they exist.
His next question is that he notes that the releases for War Machine and Hordes has slowed significantly. He says, is that strictly pandemic related, or is it a sign that Privateer Press is less keen on War Machine and Hordes than other titles?
No. So what it really is we wanted to kind of have a pretty clear demarcation and enough space to work on an entirely new faction all in house and like that. So expect something closer to 6 months ago after Orgoth come, but until Orgoth come, there's going to be no War Machine releases except for Riot Quest and Minicrate. So that's an amount of time. I don't exactly know how long it is, but it's certainly more than 4 months from now.
Okay. Next question from Morse. When you are designing a model, how much are you basing off of the lore versus how it makes sense for game balance wise? For example, Lord of the Feast is super powerful in the world of the Iron Kingdoms, but in game he is a slightly above average.
Yeah, so lore should always feed into characters, but if we ever need to do something to that character to make them work in game, just applying a keyword or something like that just clears up rules and makes them a little bit more straightforward. Like a good example is Thyra and the Daughters of Flame. Technically she is a Daughters of Flame, but like even if she wasn't, her becoming one for the rules purposes is actually really useful to make that entire module work. So, I probably would have done that even if she wasn't technically a Daughters of Flame. But the answer is we always start with the lore and try and build based on the lore, and then we fill in where we have to make the rules function.
All right, so Dragon Pup asks, as we close out the year and look to 2022, what are you most looking forward to in War Machine, Monpok, Riot Quest, IKRPG conventions, or anything else happening in 2022?
So, IKRPG, everyone that got to see the early PDFs pretty much knows what's going on for the next 6 months. There's not really that much interesting to say there, but the story going on with iOS, we're exploring that a little bit, and I think that's some pretty cool. It's the next iteration, right? There had to be a step forward with iOS. Either the gods had to come back in some way, shape, or form, or they had to die. And we chose for them to die. So they finally get to step forward and actually kind of get out of this holding pattern that they've been in for really longer than War Machine has been War Machine, because like it goes back hundreds of years basically, where they've been slowly dying, not where they've been almost dead, but yeah. So we get to finally move forward and tell a different story in iOS, which is nice. And that storytelling starts with the next IKRPG installment that was already kickstarted. With Riot Quest, we're doing a little expansion of cute little pets that I think are going to be absolutely great. I'm looking forward to people putting that on the table. War Machine, obviously, it's Orgoth because it's kind of the only thing that we can really look forward to in the immediate future. Plus, they're just really cool. I kind of like the slight Viking aesthetic, because it's just something that we haven't done in the War Machine world yet, which is good. And then Monpok, probably getting Vegetyrants filled out is probably my next, like, the thing that I'm most looking forward to. But we do have a theoretical building planned that I find absolutely hilarious. But I'm not going to go more into it. But man, late 2022. If this thing sticks around as it is, it's going to be absolutely hilarious when it gets solicited like mid 2022. Everybody will know what I'm talking about at that point.
All right. So next question from Zach Brannigan. He says, if you had to share your office with a war beast, what war beast would you pick?
I mean, it'd probably be like a baby Argus. I love dogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Final question. This is from Joe G. He says, what do you think is the core experience of War Machine and Hordes, and how would you design a product to highlight that core experience to a new player? I.e., how does one make a great intro product for a war game?
So, what I wanted to do with the starter product, which is what I think will be done in the future, just in a slightly different form, is like kind of a box that contains either everything 2 players need or everything 1 player needs. So like 2 warcasters, 5 warjacks, several units, just all in one big huge box, or 1 for each player, or all of that stuff for 1 player, depending if it's a 2 player or 1 player box. I think that is what is needed for a player to start with, because it gives them a really nice sandbox to start in, and it lets them kind of switch things up from game to game, but they're stuck in this single box for a little while. And that's kind of what I tried to do for the starters that didn't happen. Yeah, it would be very nice if we had a very obvious thing to say, yeah, you go get that, and that lets you not just play a single game with a single combination of models, but like you can play as much as you want, potentially for as long as you want, as long as you choose to play medium to small games. You'll eventually have to expand if you want to play larger games, but that's always true,
All right. Well, is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to discuss or go over?
No, not really. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thank you again for your time, and I know that we're all excited to hear from you and excited to hear what's going on with Privateer Press. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, no problem.